Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Again. Today we're continuing in our series on the 7 I am statements of Jesus. And this morning it's I am the resurrection and the life. So up until now in our I am sayings, Jesus had been talking to the Pharisees. And they were like types of critiques, rather scathing critiques, on their leadership of God's people. The way that they had blocked access to God instead of opening the door and bringing all men and women into the presence of God. Today's I am statement is a little bit different, because today Jesus is talking to one of his closest friends. So our story today is about the raising of Lazarus. And the story takes up the whole 57 verses of chapter 11 of John's Gospel. And that's a bit too long for our reading today. So I selected the passage that takes us right into the middle of the story. So to set the scene then, from the last few verses of chapter 10, it would appear that Jesus is up in the northernmost part of the Galilee, beyond the Jordan, where John used to baptise. The story begins with the introduction of our characters, and John makes sure that we know it's the same Mary and Martha that we met earlier, when Martha complained about her sister sitting at Jesus' feet while she prepared the meal for everyone. And the same Mary that anointed Jesus with fragrant oil and wiped his feet with her hair. And the sisters somehow sent a message to Jesus, and it was very simple. Lord, behold, he whom you love is sick. There's a whole new story in that about the one who Jesus loved. We won't get into that one today. Lord, behold, he who you love is sick. And what was Jesus' response? Did he drop everything and run to Bethany? It would have been quite a run, literally from one end of the country to the other. Bethany is a small village located just about 4 kilometres from Jerusalem, 2 miles, on the backside of the Mount of Olives. So when you're standing in the old city, you look across the Kidron Valley, you're looking straight at the Mount of Olives. Well, Bethany's on the backside of that, and it straddles the road to Jericho. So this is what Jesus said. When Jesus heard that, he said, "This sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God may be glorified through it." Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. Now just remember that. Jesus loved the three of them. So when he heard that he was sick, he stayed 2 more days in the place where he was. After this, he said to the disciples, "Let us go to Judea again." Can I just read that again? Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus, so when he heard that he was sick, he stayed 2 more days in the place where he was. Then after this, he said to the disciples, "Let us go to Judea." How does that work? He loves them. He knows that his friend is very ill. So instead of going straight away, he stayed another 2 days. And then he headed off to Judea. If we go back to Jesus' response to the message, his first response, we might find that when we read it, we get the wrong idea. This sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God may be glorified through it. Let's think this through together. Who is Jesus? He's the Son of God, right? In the opening chapter of his Gospel account of the life of Jesus, how does John describe Jesus? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. A little later on in the chapter, verse 14 says, And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Now let's start again. Who is Jesus? He's God, yes. If he says something, what does that make it? It makes it truth. Don't look confused. Maybe if I said, can Jesus lie? How would you answer that? Well, probably not, eh? Of course he can't. If someone is making a request to Jesus, what does that make the request? To my mind, that makes it a prayer of petition. It's a prayer. Lord, the one who you love is sick. A prayer asking for Jesus to do something, and in this case, heal his close friend Lazarus. And what does he say? He said straight away, this sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God may be glorified through it. What this means is, no matter what happens, no matter how bad it gets, Lazarus is not going to end up dead. He said that right at the outset. And the Son of God will be glorified. Jesus had a plan in which Lazarus is going to live and Jesus himself is going to be glorified. And that's what he said right at the start. In the next part of the story, we find out that things are a lot worse than we first thought. He said, Lazarus, our friend, sleeps, but I go that I might wake him up. And his disciples thought, oh, okay, fine, he's just asleep. He'll get well. However, Jesus spoke of his death, but they thought that he was speaking about taking rest in sleep. And Jesus said to them plainly, Lazarus is dead. Lazarus dies before they even leave for Bethany. Doesn't seem to worry Jesus at all. In fact, it seems as though Jesus was waiting for him to die before he set off. Our friend Lazarus sleeps, but I go that I may wake him up. In the next part of the story, Martha goes out ahead to meet Jesus on the road. And it's Mary this time who stays at home in the house. Martha seems to think that it's all over for her brother. She says to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. There seems to be an element of frustration in her words. Jesus, I prayed for you to heal my brother. I know you love him. Jesus, I prayed, I asked you to come and you didn't. And now my brother is dead and buried. Her words at this point are just words. But even now I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you. They're just words. She knew that Jesus was too late. In her heart she knew that. And she says just the right religious words. We've all been in this situation, haven't we? Even when we get a word of knowledge directly from Jesus, we just don't see how it's possible. We don't understand that an answer delayed is not an answer denied. An answer delayed is not an answer denied. She had prayed directly to Jesus. He has told her that he will raise Lazarus, but all she can see is the reality of her circumstances. And Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day. She doesn't understand that there's something bigger going on than an answer to her prayer for her brother to be healed. And then Jesus drops the bombshell. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he may die, he shall live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? It seems to bring her to her senses quickly because she remembers who she's talking to. She said, yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God who is to come into the world. You know, it's not just about you or your brother. It's about Jesus and those all around you and those who will hear about what Jesus had planned for Lazarus and come to faith because of it. Sure, you will get your answer. Martha, you'll get your answer, but not quite in the way you expect it. This sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God may be glorified through it. That's the word of God. There's something going on here that no one saw coming. No matter how late it may look to you, this will not end in death, and I will be glorified in it, said Jesus. By the time he gets there, Lazarus has been dead and buried 4 days. The Jews believed that it was not until the person was dead 4 days that he was dead. Right? His spirit had to leave. And that didn't happen until the 4th day. So everyone there knew that Lazarus was really dead. Jesus said that it would all be okay in the end. But Jesus said, it's not okay. He's dead. It's not okay. Then it's not the end, is it? It's not the end. Martha's prayer was always going to be answered. God was working on it from the moment Jesus received the message. There was no delay, but we need to understand this today. There was delay, but the prayer request was not denied. Jesus knew immediately that this was going to end well. The prayer was never denied. It was always going to be answered. If only we had listened and opened our minds to allow for the impossible to happen. The answer was coming, but it was not anything like they expected it. Sure, Jesus had raised that little girl. She'd only been dead a couple of hours. And she may not have even been dead, the doubters would say. Lazarus had been dead and buried for 4 days. In these times of delay, we have a choice. We can withdraw or we can worship. We can choose to allow our faith to grow in the knowledge that he is working and the answer is going to be greater than we can imagine. That's called faith. Trusting the word of Jesus and worshipping in it, even through difficult times. Things can seem pretty bleak at these times, and Merrill has been teaching us on desert places and desert seasons in our lives. Times when we can either throw in the towel or draw closer to God and listen to his voice in the desert places. So they get to the tomb. What does Jesus say? Well, we know that there's that verse in the Bible that everyone knows, the shortest verse in the Bible. When he saw everyone in grief, what did he do? Jesus wept. He wept for his friend. He wept with compassion. And so they get to the tomb. What does Jesus say? Take away the stone. Martha has already forgotten her statement of faith and trust in Jesus. He's been dead 4 days. It'll stink in there. And Jesus said to her, did I not say to you that if you would believe, you would see the glory of God? They took away the stone and Jesus prayed. Father, I thank you that you've heard me, and I know you always hear me, but because the people who are standing by, I said this, that they may believe that you sent me. Now when he had said these things, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. And he who had died came out, bound hand and foot with grave clothes, and his face was wrapped with a cloth. And Jesus said to them, loose him and let him go. What we're learning about Jesus is that he is able to do above and beyond anything that we can ask or think. He exceeds anything that our minds can dream up. Mary and Martha wanted a healing for their brother. Jesus waited until the full 4 days were up, and Lazarus was now officially dead, decaying and stinking dead. But Jesus is the resurrection and the life. He never intended to heal Jesus. They wanted a healing, but Jesus wanted a resurrection. When their expectation wasn't met, had Jesus forgotten them? No. What happened was a revelation, a demonstration of who Jesus is. Yes, he is the bread of life. Yes, he is the light of the world. Yes, he is the door of the sheep. Yes, he is the good shepherd. And this time, the very last and greatest sign in John's Gospel. Today we see a new revelation. Jesus is saying, I don't do resurrection. I am resurrection. You get around me and dead stuff starts waking up. Roll the stone away. But Lord, it stinks. Roll the stone away from your failed expectations and all of your fears. Roll the stone away from your dead beliefs about Jesus and the church. Roll the stone away from everything that you have locked up inside of you that is dead and decayed. Roll the stone away. Allow Jesus to minister healing and resurrection to every part of you today. Amen? Okay, friends, we're going to finish off the message at the communion table.